Hey y'all, welcome back to Browtab B School, where we talk blades and technique to up your brow game and education to grow your brow business. I'm Alex. I am the girl, the artist, educator behind Browtab and this YouTube channel. This week, I want to take you with me to microblade some brows. I want to share with you how I do my first pass, my skeleton pass of an eyebrow, so you can see how I get in as many strokes as possible to keep my shape. Why is this so important? Because after your first pass, when you wipe away your pigment mask, your secondary numbing, your outlines are totally gone. So you need to make sure you have enough strokes in the skin before this happens to keep that shape that you spent all that time mapping out. Not only do you want to get an outline, you also want to make sure that you get in as many strokes as possible. If you're leaving large gaps between each stroke in your first pass, that leaves a lot of room for error when you go back in your second pass, because you may not be getting the baseline or the top of the brows exactly as you map them out, because there's still room for error in those gaps. So getting as many strokes in as possible in your first skeleton pass is super important. You should really only have to go through and fill in strokes in more so the body of the brow on your next passes, as opposed to really putting any strokes in on your actual edges of the brows. You should have that skeleton outline from your first pass. I personally can get a full brow done generally in about 3 passes, sometimes a 4th with like 1 or 2 strokes. Take as many passes as you need. Just make sure you're getting as many in as possible in that first pass so that you have a great skeleton outline and you can hold that shape that you mapped out. So let's take a closer look.
I always start at the front of the brow, making more upward strokes, making sure I'm really getting a strong 3-point stretch where you can see that there's no movement in the skin with each stroke. I take my time between strokes to dip my blade in my pigment, making sure to not get too much pigment on the blade so I can still see where the blade is going, and to make sure I get my fingers strong on the skin, making that really tight 3-point stretch. As I get past the first few strokes, I start to angle my strokes still upward, but a little more towards the arch of the brow. I also choose if I want to focus on the top of the brow or the base of the brow. On this specific client, I chose the top of the brow. See how I shift my fingers to stretch out the skin, and you can actually see the skin being pulled over the brow bone. This is how you get an ultra strong 3-point stretch to make sure your strokes are super crisp and clean. As you approach the arch of the brow, your strokes start changing direction, still going towards the arch, but as you hit that top arch point, they will start to come downward. You need to change your positioning of your blade, but also of your fingers, making the stretch so that you are still getting a super strong 3-point stretch. I finish off making strokes along the upper point of the tail before I move back to finishing and putting strokes in the base of the client's brow. Just like with the top of the brow, you want to get as many strokes in on the base of the brow as well, so that you know your bottom points once we wipe off this outline, but also so you can see the curvature of the base of the brow once we wipe off the outline. These strokes are still going in an upward direction, but are starting to angle towards the arch of the brow so that they will curve around and come downward at the tail. These base strokes can come up towards your top strokes, but make sure they are not actually meeting your top strokes, because We never want our strokes to cross, and we also don't want to have one really, really long stroke, as that doesn't look natural. With the base strokes, be sure to be moving your fingers as you need, again, to make sure that you're getting the right 3-point stretch for that stroke. As you hit the base of the arch of your client's brows, your strokes are going to start turning even more towards the tail of the brow. Shift your hand and your body as needed to be able to place these strokes in a comfortable way. You don't always need to be sitting directly behind your client. If you want to get up or roll your chair to the side because it feels more comfortable, please do this. And that is the first pass of strokes on our first eyebrow. Now we repeat on the left brow. In order to make my front strokes match on both brows, before I apply the pigment mask and secondary numbing on the right brow, I actually do my first few strokes on the left brow so I can make sure they match as closely as possible. Once I get those first few strokes in for symmetry, then I go back to the right brow and apply my pigment mask and my secondary numbing cream. See how on the left brow I also adjust my fingers and my blade accordingly to make sure that my blade is going in the right direction for the angle of the stroke, and my fingers are being placed in the right spot to still get that perfect 3-point stretch. Once I finish the tops of the brows into the tail, I go back and put my strokes in at the base of the brow. Making sure to not leave too large of gaps between my strokes to make sure that we maintain the shape that we mapped out. Since I'm right-handed, I actually end up moving my body, shifting my body a lot more on the left brow than I do on the right brow, which is totally fine. Once again, put yourself in a position that feels comfortable for you to get those strokes going the right angle and to get your other hand in making that 3-point stretch. On the left brow, you can see here that I actually go back in and make a few body strokes for flow.
So that's it, my first pass skeleton. Get your front strokes in and then make either the top of the brow or the base of the brow, depending on where you need to place your fingers to get that stretch. Do either one first, depending where you want to place your fingers for the stretch so that you're not touching the outline and potentially smudging the outline. Be sure to still apply some body strokes within the brow, not just kind of the outline, in your first pass as well for flow. Sometimes if you don't have the strokes in the middle, the center of the brow, you don't place your outer strokes in the right way, in the right direction, because you're missing that flow. So be sure to put a few in there as well to make sure we're flowing with the brow. And don't forget your 3-point stretch. Make sure you're getting a really, really good stretch with each and every stroke. You don't want the skin to be moving at all once you put the blade in it. And of course, use a super sharp blade like the browtab Ultra Nano blade. Hope you guys learned something today about getting that first pass in. It is so important. If you did, leave me a thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this to grow your brow skills and to expand your brow business, subscribe now.